Welcome to Like Nobody's Business, the podcast that goes beyond the bottom line and reaches deep into the heart of what really matters for women entrepreneurs, leaders, and founders today. I'm Emily, your host and founder of WMNûp, a global movement community, an infinite upward spiral of visionary, resourced women entrepreneurs. I'm also a business strategist and leadership coach and a 6- and 7-figure business mentor for women entrepreneurs with over a decade of experience serving women across industries to build regenerative, intentional, and innovative business ecosystems that are transforming the world for good, without sacrificing profitability, our integrity with our values, or what matters most along the way. Here, we know that business isn't just about commerce or consumerism. It's about culture and policy. It's about challenging the systems that keep us all from rising, amplifying solutions that move us forward, and reclaiming what it is truly our business to care about as women today, at a time where many systems and structures are in dire need of recalibration for more equitable futures for all. Each week, I'll sit down with values-driven women leaders, activists, authors, researchers, and innovators who are on the front lines of shaping the conversations that matter most, issues of equity, upward mobility, and dismantling systems of oppression within ourselves, our work, and the world. Because if we're not at the table, we're on the menu. And these challenges, they're not just someone else's problem. They're our business. And together, we're here to rise, resist, and reimagine the future. This is our space to facilitate and engage in the conversations women need to be having. It's time to woman up, get uncomfortable, be brave, and take bold action that blazes new trails, both in your business and beyond. So pull up a chair, get ready to be activated, and let's dive in together. We've got this. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Like Nobody's Business. Today, I'm here with Debbie Mirza, who is a restorative coach, speaker, and author of 4 books, including the international bestseller, The Covert Passive Aggressive Narcissist. The book has received over 7,000 positive reviews on Amazon and Audible alone, and Debbie is recognized as the leading expert on this topic and has been featured in Psychology Today. Her mission is to help survivors understand what they experienced, heal from the trauma and confusion caused by these types of relationships, and awaken to the truth of their value, who they really are. You can connect with her on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, find her courses, music, meditations, and books on debbiemirza.com. We'll link everything up in the show notes for you. But welcome to the show, Debbie. It's so good to have you.
Thank you, Emily. It's good to be here.
I'm so excited to introduce you to everyone because I found your work, maybe 6 months ago during a really confusing time. And it felt like this light bulb went off for me to understand what I was experiencing and have a frame for it. Because I think a lot of times with different kinds of psychological abuse or mental illness that we may be on the receiving end of, it's so disorienting and confusing. And there's a moment where something's, wait a minute, this must have been happening before I recognized it. And now that I see it, I can't unsee it. And oh my gosh, how did this happen? What is this thing? I can't quite place it. How do I communicate the pain around it, the severity of it, like all of this stuff? And I found your work, I think, through maybe a podcast interview that you had been interviewed on. So hopefully that helps today for anyone listening to find the language and the terms around this form of specific type of, I don't know if we want to call it mental illness. I'll pass it over to you in a second. But the covert passive aggressive narcissist is really the core of your work as I know it. And I would love for you to just share how you came up with this or how this landed in your world for it to become your work and your passion and the thing that you speak and write and create around for folks.
Yeah, definitely. And I love how you explained that because that is the effects of it, just the confusion. And most of the time we end up blaming ourselves and it's can be very crazy making, really. For me, I was going through the discard phase of a long-term romantic relationship. And so I had a few different people in my life say he sounds like a narcissist or he's acting like a narcissist. And one very influential person in my life was like, I asked, what makes you say that? Because that was a surprise to me. I was not in, this was back before this was such a common topic. And so I really never thought, in my mind, a narcissist was just someone who was super selfish, self-focused, arrogant, which they are. But the person I had been with didn't fit that picture. So that would have never crossed my mind. And I asked this person, what makes you say that? And she said, I'm just hearing a lot of common traits. And I think you need to get a hold of as much information to know what you're dealing with, because this, I think, is what you're dealing with. And that was confusing to me. So I went right to Barnes and Noble and got like a stack of books, anything I could find on the subject. And there were certain things that ran true that I would read about that kept me going, but it wasn't the full picture because back then there was really nothing about covert narcissism, but only about the overt type, which is really what we think of, like that grandiose person that's full of themselves. And we tend to roll our eyes or be really annoyed by these kind of people. And that didn't fit my situation, but there were things like hidden rage that I felt and manipulation that I saw and control. But these were not things I had seen throughout the relationship. It was more, and this will happen often during the discard phase, their mask will slip more, they'll become more aggressive, they'll become more overt. And it's very shocking if you've been in a relationship for a while where you never saw these kind of traits, because they were happening, but they were happening in a more of a covert way. So it was difficult to see. So that was my first introduction to that. And then I was so confused, like anyone who's been in a relationship with a covert narcissist, because it's not obvious abuse. It's very cloaked. And so I just dove in to studying and researching because I needed pieces to put this puzzle together, this confusing puzzle I had been a part of for a long time. So I did a lot of research. I joined support groups and continued on with my life. And then the thing about a covert narcissist is their cruelty, their abuse, their punishing of you does not end after the relationship is over. So I really went through hell for years after it had ended. And it was after a really abusive email that really led me to the idea of writing this book. And it actually was like a mystical experience. I went like catatonic for a few days because my body had just been through so much. It felt like it was just shutting down. I was numb. But after a few days of this, I woke up and I started feeling angry because I knew now there were so many other people dealing with this. And I had gotten stronger, a lot stronger by that time, and a lot more clear about what this looks like. And I essentially woke up and my eyes were closed and I literally saw a book cover that said The Covert Passive Aggressive Narcissist in all capital letters. And it felt like a spiritual moment of an invitation. Would you do this? I thought, if I write this book, I don't want it to be just about me and my sad story. I wanted to be able to help as many people as I possibly could with all types of relationships in the workplace, a parent, a spouse, a partner, a friend. So I really committed. I canceled a bunch of stuff that year and I committed that year to writing this book. And I ended up interviewing over 100 people. And it was really fascinating. And it was helpful for my own journey too, because I saw myself in all these different people. And it really validated how across the board, like these are the traits, this is what it looks like. And to see other people across the table from me at a coffee shop or a restaurant just shaken on asking, like, please write about this aspect of it. So yeah, it was a really moving time. And that's pretty much the story of what led me to writing it.
Wow. It's so amazing. And I love that you did all of this research and interviewed over 100 people. Such a great swath of folks. And I don't know of anybody who I've spoken to who's interviewed that many people for their book. And it just goes to show, like, what a powerful concept this is and how far reaching, how many people's lives this touches and impacts. And so one of the things that I found really interesting and really telling when I started like putting these pieces together in my experience was this sort of pattern of these stages of narcissistic abuse. And that was maybe one of the first things that I thought, oh, maybe this is what I've experienced. Can you run through what are those stages and what does each look and feel like?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, knowing those stages really helps. The first stage is love bombing. And that stage, we can't underestimate the power of that stage, because that really sets you up for not being able to see through this kind of abuse. In the love bombing stage, and I'll use a romantic relationship as an example, but this could be in a workplace where you're just given so much like accolades and, oh my gosh, your boss or your coworker, you're amazing. So let's say with a romantic relationship, to have an example, that's the time. And I will say, like, when you hear the word love bombing, you can conjure up pictures of flowers and poems and chocolates and fine dining and being like romanced. And with a covert narcissist, they're almost more of an intelligent version of the overt narcissist. So when they meet you, they have their radar out. Like, and they learn you and they make you feel really safe. And so you open up to them quite easily. And so if you're someone who maybe songs and poems and chocolate would be too much for you, that's not how they'll love bomb you. They'll love bomb you in a way that feels so amazing to you and is, oh my gosh, this is what I've always longed for. And maybe that looks like someone who just sits with you and asks you about your life and asks you about your feelings, and you feel so safe with them. And that to you is love bombing. And so that's where the trust is formed. That's where the way you see this person is formed during the love bombing, so that when the devaluing starts happening, you end up making excuses for them, because in your mind, the original person is the person that they are. And so that's how they begin. It's beautiful at the beginning. It's lovely. And you feel so lucky to have met someone like that. Then the devaluing starts, and it starts in very subtle ways. Like maybe they start showing up late to dates, or they promise to be somewhere at a certain time and they don't show up, but there's some reason for it. Or maybe I'm just making up like scenarios. Like maybe you walk into a restaurant and you're a sensitive person, and for some reason you get to the table and you're like, is there a way we could sit at the booth over there instead? And they look at you and it's just this kind of shame attached to it, or wow, you're high maintenance, something like that gives you that feeling. But they don't say anything, like, oh, okay, whatever you want, we're all different. So they'll play on your wounding. Like maybe you already feel like you're too much. Maybe you already feel like you ask too much of people, or you're too sensitive, or this is ridiculous. Why can't you just sit at this table? And then so it's very like little bits that start devaluing the person you are, little behaviors that are confusing to you. Why didn't you show up? Why were you late? And there's always some excuse, and it always makes sense. So, and then they'll just be like belittling. They're so nuanced. It's almost hard to explain, because the covert narcissist, and there's a spectrum, I will say that with narcissism in general, there's a spectrum. There's some people who are okay, narcissistic. And then there's like really damaging, extreme. And I would say the same thing with covert. You can have someone who's covert and overt. So maybe they say things that are straight up cruel, but maybe you grew up in a family where people did that and that's just normal to you. And so you feel a sense of comfortable around that. It's like home.
Familiarity. That's not necessarily healthy, but it feels like you've linked it up somewhere with love or family. Yeah. Yeah.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Unconsciously, you're not aware. Yeah. And so there's a spectrum on covert, and some can be extremely covert, where they can make little comments that don't appear to be damaging or devaluing. A mother saying to her daughter, "Oh, I'm so proud of you for starting this new business. I'm just a little concerned because I know you get tired a lot, and I've never really seen you actually like complete something. And I know you're this or you're that, but so I'm just concerned." So it's a lot of, that's what I mean by covert. It's, you can't say this person's being mean because nothing about that comment is mean, but you end up leaving the conversation feeling completely devalued and questioning all these things that you're doing because you're already feeling like, can I do this? So they're these people more and more are very disempowering of who you are. And so that devaluing, demeaning stage lasts then the entire relationship. But it starts slow. It's a slow burn and you don't notice it. And then it increases. It's like that whole, you put a frog in tepid water and you slowly turn it up over time. And you slowly start losing a sense of who you are, and your confidence starts waning, and you start developing health issues and you can't figure out why. And you find yourself depressed a lot and you can't figure out why. But a lot of times people who end up with people like this are very self-actualizing. Like, we're people that don't want to blame other people for our emotional state. We are always growing and evolving. So it's okay, I need to look at this. Or we want to be open to someone we trust bring something up that's a negative comment about us. Oh, maybe I do need to look at this. Maybe I didn't think I was materialistic, but maybe I am more than I think. I don't think of myself as controlling, but he keeps saying that I am, or she keeps saying, so maybe there is a part of me. It's a slow chipping away of who you are. It's the opposite of being with like a friend who loves and adores you and sees you clearly. They're holding up an accurate mirror. Whereas a covert narcissist is projecting their stuff often onto you, and you end up taking that and thinking that's true of yourself when it's really not. So that's the devaluing, demeaning. And with that, there's intermittent reinforcement. So it's not all bad. There's beautiful cards and loving statements and tender hugs and dates and things where, oftentimes when you're leaving a relationship, you'll bring up, there was just so many times of awfulness, but then there was that one time where she wrote me that really beautiful card, and you'll cling to those things. And it's those things that, it's like the trauma bonding thing that keep us in these relationships, because we're just waiting for that next breadcrumb of something that resembles love and kindness. And depending on how severe it is, how long you're in a relationship, you can get to where you don't even believe you deserve love anymore, or are worthy of kindness and respect. And you really lose who you are and the truth of what you deserve. And so that's the entire relationship. And then the discard is the final. And that is brutal and shocking, because the thing you have to keep in mind with the covert narcissist, and all narcissists really, they're not capable of an intimate, deep relationship. They don't have the capacity. Everyone's capable, but the way they're choosing to live their life, they're not. They don't have the capacity for that. So a relationship, you are their supply. And in many ways, you're auditioning for this part during the love bombing phase, where they'll often test you How far will you go to sacrifice yourself for me? And so they're essentially, whether it's conscious or unconscious, auditioning you for the part of someone who will give their all to them. So it's a very one-sided thing, and you're there to fill something in them. So
And you
it's
don't even
not
know. You're not aware of the rules of engagement here. You're not
totally
aware.
not.
This is all happening without your awareness, without your consent. You didn't say, this is who I'm going to be for you, and here's the role that I'm playing. You're not actually aware or consenting to them casting you in that role. They're doing that and making those decisions for you, which makes it an impossible standard or expectation to ever even meet. And they're just looking for the thing that's, oh,
Yeah.
you failed or something.
Yeah, exactly. And so covert narcissists especially, are rarely ever alone because they need that supply. So as soon as you're done or before you're done, they're with someone else. They're beginning the new auditions. And that's also sometimes these relationships end because you start getting strong. And a narcissist has no interest in being with someone who's strong, that theirs won't work anymore. So a lot of times that will start crumbling during that time. So yeah, they're very confusing because in your mind, you're thinking like a normal person. I'm in love with their person. They're in love with me. We want to have this great relationship. We want harmony, but harmony really isn't their objective unless it gives them what they want. Because it all comes down to them. It's all about them. So once you're no longer providing what you provided for them at the beginning, they're done with you. And it's a brutal ending because you're crying in fetal position on the couch. You're so torn up and they're fine and they've moved on and they treat you like garbage. And this is nothing you've seen before. And it's so confusing. And they're putting all the blame on you. And you're wondering if they're right because you've been so trained for so long to see things as your fault, that there's something inherently wrong with you. And it's because of you that this relationship didn't work.
Yep. And then you think that's the end, but then what happens?
Yeah. You really become the target of their rage. They're not done with you because they are very rageful people. Ultimately, they're very insecure and filled with shame. And this is their way of acting out
Dealing
and
with
controlling. That. Yeah, exactly. Like a bully does. Like, I'll hurt you before you can hurt me. So depending on the discard, if this is dating or a marriage, or if there are kids involved, let's say this is a divorce situation, then they control what they can control. If they're making more money, they're controlling the money and they're trying to strip you from as much as possible. If you have kids, they're trying to control that. Or different ones can do it, or they're completely have no interest in taking care of the kids. And that's the thing too. If you have a parent who's a covert narcissist, they can be great at the beginning when the kids are like, mommy, daddy, then the kids are their supply. But once they start getting a mind of their own, they start thinking for themselves, the covert narcissist really is no longer interested in them. And they will punish kids as they age. If, for instance, they don't take your advice on what type of job or career to go after, they will cut you off in a heartbeat. Because it's all about the supply. It's all about what other people are giving to them is really like the essence of these relationships.
So very transactional, but not in a way that you would imagine it to look. It's not as forthright or outward or overt as you might think when someone is being transactional, but this is quite transactional, but it's almost in a way that is very like, what do you mean? No, I didn't do that. I didn't say that. No, like I said this, or gaslighting, or almost like reinventing truth to suit their own need. And it feels, what I'm hearing you describe is this feeling of, as you said, normal, healthy people want harmony in relationship. But actually, for these folks, that's almost a threat to the supply. Like,
Yes.
if they have actual harmony and love and peace and the pure thing, it's like maybe dissatisfied in a way because they don't know how to be with that. Actually, what they know how to be with is like the fight or the rage or the this or the looking for something to like, there's something that needs to be fed in there somewhere
Right.
or validated and loved. But instead of doing that, there's this different behavior that sort of pops through where it's about control or it's about making something look a certain way or turning someone else against that person, or it's a power play for them.
Right.
Hey, love, it's Emily. I'm interrupting this podcast episode really fast just to tell you something that's a secret I forgot I was keeping and didn't mean to keep from you, which is that we actually have a free space for you to dive into at WMNûp called Calibrate. I was asked recently if we have a monthly option or a trial to test out the community before joining us for a full year. We don't, and we've actually tried that before, and ultimately we made the choice to not offer it because it was actually a disservice and antithetical to our teachings, values, offerings, and integrity of our space, which is truly founded on transformational, deep, long-term relationship building and community participation and engagement, both of which require commitment. Because actually, all transformational change, evolution, and growth requires the precedent of commitment. That being said, I know that you want to make sure that your investment will be aligned and that the work that we do at WMNûp is the right fit for you and your business at this point in time. And if you haven't already felt that through listening to this podcast, Calibrate is the perfect way to kind of test it out. And we solved this problem just a few months ago and admittedly have not been too vocal about what that pathway looks like for you. So I'm popping into the podcast today to let you know about it and let you know that we've built this entire free space for you inside Calibrate on our Circle platform, which is where all of our other programs and services are offered as well. So for those of you who are curious about becoming a member of the community or maybe applying to one of our mastermind experiences, Momentum if you're growing to 6 figures plus, or the Leadership Mastermind if you're scaling from multiple 6 figures to 7 figures and beyond, this free space will support you to plug into our frequency, our vibes, our ethos at WMNûp, to begin to calibrate up to your next WMNûp moment and initiate your infinite upward spiral of evolution and a new way of leading, growing, and scaling a regenerative business ecosystem with intention, innovation, and impact. Once you're inside, you'll receive free access to an amuse-bouche of resources to help you woman up, including our juicy training videos and masterclasses, including our 3-part Infinite Upward Spiral masterclass and our Visionary masterclass, our business ecosystem template that you can plug into any project management tool that you're already using, like Asana, Trello, Monday, Notion, whatever you like to use, and a training video from me walking you through exactly how to use it to get organized in the back end of your business. We also have some incredible replays of our 3-day Big Visionary Energy virtual conference for female founders that we hosted in October, which is a real incredible activation and virtual conference that is self-paced and you can go through at your own, in your own time, in your own way. You'll also get access to our events calendar for non-members. We have a separate event calendar inside the community for our paid members. But think live trainings and virtual happy hours. Some events will be free, others will be paid. All of them happen virtually and live inside of our platform for so much ease. And you'll have the ability to submit your questions for me to answer on an upcoming solo episode of our podcast. So what do? If you love the way that all sounds, jump to the show notes and click that link to join Calibrate and get yourself plugged into our ecosystem. It's time to have your next WMNûp moment. I'm so excited to see you in there and to serve you and support you in this way. There is a plethora of resources in there. And once you're ready, once you already know that this is the space for you, we invite you to jump up into the community for just $197 a month or $19.70 for the full year and get access to our quarterly in-person events called WMNûp Weekends. They're 2 days each. This year, we're going to be taking them all across the US, which is really exciting. So come join us. We'd love to have you. And if you have any questions, of course, you can always send me a direct message on Instagram at Emily in Your Business or at WMNûp, spelled WMNûp. Back to the episode.
Yeah, and turning someone against you, there's a common manipulative tactic they'll use, which is triangulation. So they will pit two people against each other, but in a way where the two people don't notice the person playing marionette, pulling the strings. And so they'll end up having a problem with that person and really not notice how this all started. That it started from this person saying, she said that. I was like, what? And then telling this other person, she said that. What? And then it's this distractive. And they really are, they might talk a big game about how they don't like drama, they want peace, but they really are all about drama. It's just, and that's the thing with a covert narcissist, the actions rarely match the words. They're very good with their words.
Yeah, it's don't listen to the words they're saying, look at the results. Look at the actions, look at the results. Yes. How are their other relationships? Have they spoken to you about people in a negative way that they claim to love on social media or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they don't often
you can watch them do the same, they can play out the same exact dramas and patterns with other people. You're seeing it from a different angle and you assume you're immune to that in some way, that you're actually like a trusted person for them.
Yeah.
Versus everybody else, because in their version of reality, everybody else is the problem, right? So everybody else in the world is doing them wrong versus them being actually the common denominator that's creating chaos and havoc and drama and pain and suffering and all of that around them like a tornado.
Yeah.
So those are the stages. And then there's also hoovering, right? That's sort of like additional stage. So we have the love bombing, we have the devaluation, and then we have discard, and then there's hoovering, right? Which is they pop back in.
Yeah, I think it originates from like the Hoover vacuum, like sucking back in. And some covert narcissists do that. Some of them don't. Some just cut you off, they're done. And then they'll throw their rage at you. But there are many covert narcissists that will hoover you back. You'll go through the discard phase and then they'll come back. I'm so sorry. You deserve better than this. I'll change, whatever would work for you with your personality, the way that you're hurt. And they gather all this information over time. Where are your weaknesses? Where are your insecurities? What are your longings? And we'll use that to try and get you back. And so that gets really confusing too, because there's such cognitive dissonance where you have these two competing thoughts. You have this person that's treating you so terribly, but this is also the person that from the love bombing stage and have seen that person as that love bombing person for so many years, depending on how, long you've been with them. So it's a really confusing thing where you're trying to figure out what the truth is. And so they can come back and try and hoover you back and say all the right things that help soften your heart and help you think, oh, maybe I was viewing this all wrong and they actually are a good person. They're just going through a hard time, or whatever excuse they're feeding you. But with covert narcissists, sometimes they might change for a couple weeks where you're like, okay, they're really working on this, what we talked about, but they always come back to their original self. And then and this could go on for a while, like breakup, hoovering. And it's so hard because you truly love this person and there's parts of being with them that feel so good and you don't want to let that go. almost becomes like this addictive thing that you don't want to let go, but you also know it's really damaging you and it's wreaking havoc in your life and in your body, and you're exhausted and confused. And yeah, that's what hoovering is.
Mm-hmm. And when it comes to narcissism in general, how many people are affected by this who are, I think I saw a stat somewhere, but this was a while ago, that maybe it was like 10% of the population-ish. And I'm guessing that's, you know, I think it might have been like the dark triad was 10%, meaning like sociopathy, narcissism, and do you know what that is? What makes up
Yeah,
the dark triad? I can't remember the third. It's
I think
probably so obvious.
I know I'm blanking on a
I'll
third as
Google it. Hold
well.
on. I'll
Okay.
Google it, but you keep talking.
Okay. Last I heard, it was 1 in 6 people, which to me is pretty high. And that's how it feels. But at the same time, it's hard to know for sure because narcissists aren't going to admit that they're narcissists, and they're
Right?
not going to go in to do a study. So it is hard. I heard just recently it's probably higher with celebrities and even higher with politicians. It's those tend to breed just people, not all celebrities, not all politicians, but that is a cesspool for narcissistic personalities that want to be famous, that want to be in front of people, that want to, especially the ones who like get to have this crowd in front of them that's just constantly filling. And that's also a really tricky aspect of covert narcissists, because these can be humanitarians and pastors and rabbis and yoga instructors and cult leaders, Kundalini teacher, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like these are people who they get fed by the supply of the people listening to them and following them and hanging on their every word. That's where it gets really difficult, because they act so nice and they're these people out there helping other people, and they have this facade, and then they treat you in a certain way. It's very mind effing. And then they'll use the lingo. These can be therapists. I've talked to people who went to therapy and they ended up being narcissistic therapists. And it's so damaging because these people have so much clout in our mind. And in our minds, they're educated. They know more than I do. So I should trust them more than myself. And ultimately, I feel like bringing in some encouragement for anyone, especially those who have been with a covert narcissist, but any narcissist really, but especially covert. This can take you, when you decide to really heal from this and to really look at this. Why was I okay with this? Why did I not see it? A lot comes down to trusting ourselves. And most of us have not been raised to trust ourselves, no matter what. And no matter how famous the person is in front of you, no matter impressive, how educated, how kind, no matter what the words they're saying, if your body is feeling something, your stomach is tight, or suddenly you feel like you just can't think clearly, or you're feeling disempowered, or you're questioning your own worth when you're around this person, that is what you listen to. That is what you trust. And that takes incredible courage, especially when you're around someone and you're the only one feeling this, and everyone else around them is defending them. That is like next level growth. And
Ninja.
that is ninja level. And I feel like saying to people who have been through this, do not diminish what you have been through, because this is hardcore psychological. I was going to say warfare too. In some ways,
It is.
It
totally is. And once you become aware of it, you realize how insidious it always was.
Yes.
Like you weren't aware of it, you weren't cognizant of it. But then when you look back, oh my goodness, like that actually, I brushed that off because I tend to give people the benefit of the doubt, but that was
Mhm.
calculated. That was like
Yes.
Maki, like that
Yeah.
was manipulative. That was incredibly like what else was going on that I didn't know about or didn't see? And I
Right.
think this is such a crazy thing to look out for, especially as a business owner, as a woman in the world, as any type of person, to have this awareness and to know how to spot this a little bit better and to have the frame
Yes.
around it is so helpful and such a skill set. So I would love for you to share a little bit about like how do these people tend to, are there signs that we can spot? Are there things to look out for? How do we protect ourselves from this? And also, if you want to share, what are those qualities and traits that differ from the overt narcissist of a covert passive aggressive narcissist?
Yeah. So all narcissists are arrogant. They feel entitled. They don't have empathy. They have this grandiose sense of self, but and they all control, they all manipulate, they devalue, love bomb, all of it's the same. But the covert type, those traits manifest differently. They show up differently. So, for instance, empathy. When you're with a overt narcissist, it's obvious they don't care about you. They're not taking the time to put themselves in your shoes. A covert cares very much about their reputation. They care about what everybody thinks of them. And so they will work hard to keep a stellar reputation, and they want to be liked. And so they will learn how to act like they care, how to act like they're showing empathy. They're very observant, and I'm thinking of when I went through the discard with this particular person. There was a friend of mine that said whenever we were around him, he just felt scripted. And I thought that's a really good way to put it. If you notice with covert narcissists, they feel scripted. They really feel like a Hollywood actor or actress. And there's a strange phenomenon that isn't talked about that much. And that is they really don't have a strong sense of self. Think about the person, for all your listeners, if you're wondering if someone's a covert narcissist. Okay, imagine them in a room, in a circle with other people that maybe your best friend or someone in your family you trust, people who have been like solid, good people in your life that you've never questioned their love for you. So now just picture each one of them. Like when I'm talking to you, Emily, like we've just met, but I can get a sense of who you are. I can feel who you are. I can see who you are. But when you take the time, which we don't often do, to look at a covert narcissist, there's this strange phenomenon that you realize, who are they? Like they really feel hollow. And it's almost if you were to, so you think of your one person in your life that is a good person that's loved you always. And if I were to ask you, give me some adjectives to describe that person, you could probably come up with many. Now think of a covert narcissist and do the same thing. Give me adjectives to describe this person. There probably wouldn't be a lot. He's nice. She's good looking. There would be like a loss for words. And I find that really interesting because they're, for whatever reason, even on a soul spiritual level, whatever has happened to them, they're so buried. We can't even see who they are. And I think that's a big reason they look for supply to fill that, because that's like way too scary to reach in and find that person that is vacant for some reason. So that's an interesting thing to think about if someone is wondering about a person in their life. So yeah, so they will act. That's where it takes ninja level trust in your body. Like this person's looking me in the eyes. He's saying things or she's saying things that are empathetic. but it doesn't feel like they're really in this with me. Like when you're with someone who really is, you can feel when someone's showing you empathy. And then other ways, they have a grandiose sense of self, but they're not like, oftentimes they're not like the life of the party. They're not like that person that walks in and is like telling the jokes and like the grandiose, like, I love attention person. They might even be the person in the corner that wants to hear about you. And so I knew a guy once where I didn't see it at first. And this is where it's so cloaked. So he's in the world of counseling and spirituality, and he would target women who are empaths. So sensitive, kind, caring, intuitive women. And he would start these support circles, like on his website, join our empath circle. And then he would end up getting in relationships with these women. Yeah, it's so creepy and dark and very cult-like. So this is what I mean, where it's like, you wouldn't find an overt narcissist like starting a support group for empaths. But a covert person knows, oh, this is a gold mine.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Even to think like that is it's so weird.
It's really weird.
Who's walking around like you're missing life. You're missing the beauty of connection and love and joy and the richness and depth of relationship that's healthy. It's so sad.
It is.
And creepy and sad, and also I don't want to be involved.
Yeah, it makes your skin
protect
crawl.
yourself. Yeah. Absolutely. So we can look out for these things and also notice, and your book goes into deeper detail on all of this, of course. So if you're loving this conversation and you're listening, get the book because you'll dive in deeper and understand this on a deeper level. What do you think people get wrong about this? Because I think, like you're saying, we tend to have this idea in our minds or this picture in our minds of what a narcissist is and isn't based on the overt version and the more primary way that we've seen that show up in society that we're more familiar with. But what do you think people get wrong about the covert passive aggressive narcissist?
Yeah. So I see one thing often that people get wrong is the idea, and I speak of it this way, it's hidden abuse, which it is. But that can have a connotation where some people can think, oh, okay, so this was someone on the outside that was nice to everybody, but at home, they were a different person and they were abusing the people at home. And that's where it's hidden. The difference is with covert narcissist, the abuse, it's true when they're out, they're nice and people love them. But when they're home, they are emotionally and psychologically abusing the people in the home, but the people don't see it either. It's not obvious, especially the more covert it is. And it's so nuanced and it's difficult to see and to recognize. And so that gets confusing for people who haven't gone through this. They'll have that idea of, oh, this is covert abuse, it's hidden abuse. So it's hidden from the world, but it's not hidden from the people who are being abused, but it actually is. I met a woman who had been married to a covert narcissist for over 40 years and had absolutely no idea. And another thing people get wrong, like I've told that, and then it had the reaction of people who had been with an overt narcissist or maybe a covert overt combo. And they were like, oh my gosh, I would have never lasted that long. I went through hell with this person. I could only last 2 years. So that's not understanding how deep the covert can go, where no one's immune to this. I've talked to therapists who have been a therapist for over 30 years, and they were married to a covert narcissist and didn't see it. So this really is newish information that even with therapists going to school right now are not being taught about the covert type. And it's incredibly damaging because of that, because it really, you're living with someone who truly doesn't care about you. and in many ways hates you, and you can feel it, but it's not obvious. And so you end up thinking all these things are wrong with you, and you don't really open up and tell people because you feel like if I share these stories, they don't sound that bad. And if I share these stories, people will be like, oh, really? No, you might be misinterpreting that because he's such a nice guy or she's such a nice woman. So it's you feel very alone in it. And it's very confusing and very damaging because you can't see it. You're not aware this is happening, but your body is. And that's where a lot of people have a lot of chronic health issues because they are constantly, the psyche knows, the body knows, but the mind takes the longest to realize.
Mm-hmm. What kind of people are these folks drawn toward? Like for partners in relationships, or maybe they have a favorite child, or maybe they've got something going on with, maybe they're looking for a friend or they're looking for a service provider or something. What is it that they are attracted to, a moth to a flame, about the people that they choose as their source of supply?
Yeah. So they look for people who are trusting, who are kind, who are naturally giving, naturally caring, and people who have been wounded in a way where we haven't learned boundaries, and we don't have a clear picture of what love actually looks like and what we deserve. So a lot of times people who haven't been taught their worth and don't have strong boundaries and don't know they're worthy of having strong boundaries, and people who are naturally trusting and giving and have a deep heart, these are people that can be manipulated. And these are people that it's a narcissist dream, because they know it's these kind of people that will stop everything if they need attention. And covert narcissists will often use their emotions to steer the ship, to steer you into, because they know, for instance, let's say it's your birthday and you're with a partner who's a covert narcissist, and just all of a sudden, for no reason, they just feel really down. Maybe it's some little thing that doesn't really merit like how down they are. You're a giving, loving person. You care about them. You're not going to go on like celebrating your birthday when they're feeling all these difficult feelings. You're going to stop everything and make sure you're there for them. So this is one way that covert narcissists will manipulate to get the attention back on them. Birthdays are always difficult and painful, and there's always issues around your birthday, because a covert narcissist, any narcissist, does not want you to be happy, does not want you to be celebrated, does not want any day to be about you, because every day needs to be about them.
In your research, have you found what is motivating that for them? Is it like why? What is the satisfaction point for them that you aren't joyful, or that you are suffering, or that you don't get the attention? Or do you have any idea?
On a really basic level, you're not their supply anymore. You're their supply when you're feeding them with your time, with your energy, with your heart. And so if the attention is on you, then they're without a supply. And I don't know what that's like to live in the mind of a narcissist, like how that feels and I think there's also a spectrum on how aware they are. Some are so calculated. And then I think on another spectrum, like they're just so unaware. This has just become how they live. Yeah. So in a very it's not about them, and no one's feeding them.
And
I'm
when
sure there's probably nuances to that I'm not aware of. And every person's different. It could be a woman who hated her dad, or a man who hated his mom and was then projecting that stuff on to their partner. There's a lot of like nuanced things too that would be hard to say across the board.
And what is their response if you become strong and you put up a boundary and you say, I'm not willing to tolerate this?
A lot of rage comes out, a lot of attempt to gaslight you and to turn things around. Let's say you find they've been texting another woman or another man, and you bring it up to them. You have the courage now to confront them. And they'll take that and go, oh my gosh, you're so overly sensitive. You are literally paranoid. They'll turn it back on you because they're not ever about taking responsibility. And also the thing you don't notice, there's such a lack of love that you don't notice, that someone who loves you would care about your heart and go, oh my gosh, that would feel awful. That's where like the real empathy comes in. Okay, let me explain everything that you need to feel better. Like, this is a coworker, here's the situation, but also if this is affecting you like this, I will talk to this person and we will stop texting. Your heart is what matters. And that's what you don't get from a narcissist. You don't, maybe they say it, but their actions don't show it. So when you get strong and you start bringing things up to them, you start confronting them, that's when they really up the ante with the gaslighting. That's where maybe someone who's never yelled at you in years or decades will start yelling at you now. And it will be talk of like a lot of blaming you for this and that, like just all of a sudden out of the blue, because it's like a pivot, redirect your attention so you don't notice what's happening tactic.
Okay. Oh my gosh. I feel like we could talk about this for 10 more hours and get into all the nitty gritty. But lucky for all of us, you have a book that you've written on this. So we can go learn from you for many hours, however long it takes to get through the book. And okay, anything else that I didn't ask you or that we didn't cover today that you feel is important to note for people who are just maybe hearing this for the first time or opening their eyes to this or thinking, maybe that's what that was?
Yeah, my first advice for people is to get educated, to really find out. There's times where a label is not helpful and can be damaging, but in this situation, a label is really helpful to actually, for, like you mentioned with my book, like where I lay out the traits and I share many stories of what this looks like. That's for me always like a first step thing. And there's really stages to this. And also, I've had people say they actually really, this is a lot, especially at the very beginning. You're going through so much and you're realizing so much, and it's a lot. And I've had people tell me that they really liked listening to my audio book because they could hear my voice and feel the care, and just it was like they were able to digest or receive the information. For other people, they want like the physical book, but I wanted to let people know it's also on Audible if you prefer that. And also, if you're still in a relationship with the person and you don't want my book hanging around, you don't want them to see my book. That's a nice way, like when you're in the car on a walk, to like really learn and arm yourself, and to become aware, but also be really gentle with yourself and to acknowledge this is a really big deal. And you've been wounded and your nervous system has been affected and your psyche and your very belief about who you are. So if you have people in your life that are supportive, surround yourself with them. If you don't, do whatever feels nurturing during this time, and really to become the greatest caretaker you've ever been for yourself before.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And I love that you have it on audiobook as well, because that's my chosen form of learning and receiving content. Always great to have it on a walk and get those steps in, get some movement, especially when you're listening to something that can be quite emotionally intense. To be moving while you're receiving it, I feel is a really good combination as well, to just be able to process and integrate what you're learning through the body at the same time. Amazing. Thank you, Debbie, for being here with me today and for this conversation that I'm sure will be so valuable and eye-opening for everyone who's tuning in. And thank you, everybody, for being here. I will talk to you all next week, and we'll link everything of Debbie's so you can get in touch with her, follow her on social, YouTube, her email list, perhaps, her website, grab the book, all the places. You can find all of that linked up for you nicely in the show notes.
Keep your mind wide open, keep your soul aligned. You've got all the answers waiting there inside. You're not alone. Take a throne like nobody's business, like nobody's business.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode of Like Nobody's Business. So, what did you think? I hope you found this episode absolutely enlivening. If you loved it, I'd be so grateful if you'd help me spread the word by sharing this episode with a friend or a loved one you know would feel supported and encouraged by this too. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you won't miss an episode. It's also infinitely helpful to me and to my team if you take a moment to rate and review the podcast so that other trailblazers like you can find this resource, know it exists, and step out of struggle and into more ease. Thanks so much for sharing your time with me today and for taking this space to receive nourishment for your greatest vision. And in case no one told you this today, you are wildly brilliant, beautifully wise, and radically trustworthy. Keep shining your light so that all of those who need what you're here to share with our world can see, feel, and experience your unique medicine. Thank you, thank you, thank you, and I'll talk to you soon.
Nobody's business, like nobody's business.